Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we can start. We'll wind up with what we started on Tuesday, and today we shall have a series of short lectures. We'll finish what we started, then we'll have another quite short lecture, then we'll have another one which is long. We may not finish it. So without much ado, let's start off. So last time we started looking at project initiation. Let me just go there. So we looked at project initiation, and we said that in the initiation phase, the problem or opportunity is identified, the business case is created, the solution is identified, the project is formed, and the project team is appointed. And what we said, we talked a lot about these things. Now we said that finally, after you have looked at all these things, you put it in a formal way, and that formal way is by writing what is called a project charter. Now, this charter is a signed document and it forms the legal basis for your project. I think there must be somewhere I must have talked about it. So today we start looking at the project charter. Now remember, for you to reach that point where you are writing the project charter, then it means that you have looked at the project and you have seen that it is feasible or it's a viable project. Now, once you have determined that it's feasible or viable, then you have to formalize it. Now, you formalize it through a document called the project charter. So today we look at the project charter. Now, what is the purpose of the project charter? Now, when the project charter is signed off, one has the approval to proceed to detailed planning, followed by carrying out the project. So after the charter, then you plan how you're going to do the project, because the charter simply means that legally you have agreed, all the stakeholders have agreed that this project is viable, so we can now proceed. Now, to proceed, in the charter you outline certain things and you send them, and like I said, it forms the legal basis which both all the sponsors will feel liable to, and it is going to be well understood, and all the stakeholders will keep referring to that project charter. We looked at this. So what are the typical contents of the project charter? A project charter should include an identification section where it will identify all the relevant stakeholders. You know, a project can be done by 50 people. Now, of those 50 people, they will have representatives. Like the project manager will represent the project team. The sponsor will have a representative. The client will have a representative, and so on. So you must identify the project and identify the people involved in the project. So you must have project purpose or justification. You must have measurable project objectives and related success criteria. You must have high-level requirements. High level in the sense that a project is a technical piece of work. But this project, you are doing it to serve the needs of the client or the customer. Now, it's the customer that has high-level requirements. Like a customer will say, I want a 3-bedroomed house. Then you will say, I want it to be a maisonette. I want the bedrooms to be this size. Those are very high level. So the technical details will come much later. The technical details will be done by the project team. Like if it's a piece of software, the customer will just tell you, I want a stock management system. Then you'll ask him, what do you want the system to do? He will describe the users. He will describe the kind of user interface he wants. He will say what the system should be doing. The system, anytime he purchases things, he enters the details of the things he has purchased into the system. Now, when something is bought, he'll tell you that I want the system to tell me when the level reaches to such and such a point. It alerts me. I want this system to be producing reports. Now, you will stop at that, and especially for software projects, you'll just stop at his requirements. Now, that's why we are saying we want high-level requirements. High level because you're not going to go into the details. Now, for you to go into the details, then what will happen is you'll do a systems analysis. So when you're doing the system analysis, when he says, I want an easy to use user interface, then you'll have to describe what easy to use interface means. But here you state the high level requirements. You will have to talk about the assumptions and the constraints, or rather the charter will have to include the assumptions and the constraints. The charter will include high-level project description and boundaries. In other words, what is this project about? It's a stock management system. When does the project end? You say, we shall say the project is complete when you deliver the code or the application, its user manual and its installation manual and a troubleshooting manual. Once it's delivered, then and it is running. So that is the boundary. Now you have to specify that because I mentioned last time that software projects, their use phase is much longer than their development phase. So you'll develop a piece of software and you'll use 6 months, and somebody is going to use it for 3 years. So you must specify the boundary. Where are you stopping? You've done it in 6 months, and 2 years down the line, your client is still calling you, and yet you are doing other things. So you must say it will end at this point when I deliver the application, the user manual, the installation manual, and the maintenance manual. Now, after that, let's sign another contract for maintenance, upgrading, and so on. That is another contract. Otherwise, if you don't specify the boundary, you may find that your project is not ending. You start quarreling with your customer after you have delivered it. Now, again, here we are talking about the high-level project description and boundaries. Then you must state the risks, summary of milestone schedule. Now, here we are talking about a summary of milestones. Now, in projects, milestones are places where you can temporarily stop and look at what you have done and look at what is remaining. So it's a point where you can stop, and it usually it will have a product, and then it will help you. A milestone helps you to reflect on what you have done and to try and predict what you are going to do next. So, like in software projects, a milestone could be the point at which you have written a requirement specification. So you see, in a project, gathering requirements is a phase of a project. So you'll gather requirements, and it will involve talking to various stakeholders. Then you put what they have told you into a formal document. Now, once you put it into a formal document, you will call a meeting, and you have written it in a formal way. You'll call a meeting, and you'll go through that formal document which you are calling, because the first is gathering requirements. But what is the product? The product of gathering requirements is a requirements specification document. So you now go through the requirement specification document with the representatives of the stakeholders, and then you say, yes, this captures what we want the system to do. Another milestone could be doing a systems analysis. So you'll have a system analysis document. Then you call a meeting and you review. The next one would be the design phase, where you are designing. Once you've done with the designing, you'll present your design diagrams. And again, you look at these design diagrams with the relevant people and agree. Now, at the end of every milestone, you must have an agreement, and that agreement is seen by signatures, the way people sign. So, having seen that, then summary budget. Part of the information will come from what we were doing on Tuesday. Stakeholder list, we looked at that, and then approvals. Because we've said this is one document, so approvals are you and all the representatives of the stakeholders. So this table is simply talking more, elaborating on what I've just said. So identification, name of the project, and it should be a meaningful name. Like if you are developing a stock management system, don't just say stock management. I mean, what does stock management mean? Don't just say stock management system. Again, that is too general. You say stock management system for Wanderi supermarket. Or even better, a web-based stock management system for Wanderi Holdings. So the name should be meaningful. Then it should have the name, title, department of the project sponsor, and the name of the project manager. You have seen, okay, for individual houses, sometimes you don't see, but you've seen that anytime a commercial building is being put up, there's usually a billboard or something that advertises, and it says what the project is. It says who this project belongs to. It says who the contractor is, the architect is, and so on. So all projects must have an identity. Now, so it will have these things. This identifies the project. Then you give a background. You are going to be, because this is a document, you are going to say Wanderi Holdings is a medium-sized supermarket that employs so many employees. It serves approximately so many customers, and it deals with this. And then at the end, you will say, why are you doing this project? Wanderi Holdings has been operating a manual stock management system. In other words, you identify the problem. You say the current status, identify the problem, and you must say the proposed project intends to do A, B, C, D. And you must say in which way it's going to do it. But in this background, you are describing the project in a layman's language. Do not put their technical details. Put it in a language that a layman can understand. Then you must have objective. Now, I've had many problems with students about this thing, about objectives. Now, objectives, one is a single statement. And an objective must be specified or expressed in a measurable verb. Like, for example, if it's an ICT project, a system development project, the objective, and we have what are called project objectives, and we have system objectives. Now, people keep mixing the two. They mix project objectives and system objectives. Now, project objectives are what the project is all about. System objectives are what the system is going to do. So do not mix those two. Project is about the project. The aim of this project is to develop a stock management system for Wanderi Holdings. Now, what do I mean by measurable verb? Measurable verb simply means if you use the word develop is a measurable word, because later on, when you are handing over the project, you will answer to this objective. You see, you have used the word develop. So you will ask, was the system developed? Now, the answer is yes. That objective has been met. Now, people play around with the objectives quite a lot. And that is fairly dangerous. You will end up with caught if you joke around with the objectives. And people don't think that objectives are important, but objectives bring about qualities of project. Objectives measure how the project went. Was it successful or was it a failure? So I've said we have project objectives. What is the project? What is this project supposed to do? And I've said, like if it's ICT, you'll say to develop a stock management system for Wanderi investments. That is the project. And it could be one or two. What is the system objective? In this project, you came up with a product. Now, how did you come up with this product? System objective. Gather requirements. The word gather is measurable. Because at the end of the project, at the end, when you are delivering the product, you'll ask, did he gather the requirements? The answer is yes. How do you know? You know because it has a requirement specification document. Perform a systems analysis. The word perform, is it measurable? Yes, it is, because you can see the systems analysis document. Design the system. Design is measurable. Did he design the system? Yes, he designed the system, because you can see design documents. So differentiate between project objectives and system development objectives, and make sure that you write those objectives in measurable terms, and let the objectives also be a boundary. Somebody puts there an objective, maintain the system. Yes, maintain is a measurable word. Are you going to maintain that system? In your mind, you are an entrepreneur, you have set up your company. In your mind, you are saying, I will develop for you a stock management system. But in your mind, because this is a startup company, you are looking for other projects. So after 6 months, you deliver the product and all the documents that accompany that product. 8 months later, your client comes and tells you, I want you to add this component. You tell him, but I've given you your product. That is outside. He brings a document and you've said, maintain the system. You have stated it and all of you signed. So be careful about objectives. You've already done your second year project. You didn't do project. You hadn't done project management at that time. You are going to do your fourth year project. Some of you are going to do that. Say maintain the system. Remember, your fourth year project, you'll do it in 2 semesters. After you leave here, you leave the university. That's the end. After your project is marked, that's the end. So do not put there an objective like, I'm going to maintain this, because you're not going to do it. And somebody will ask you, how did you maintain this objective? And what we mean by a measurable verb, like you put something like, the system will have a beautiful user interface. It will have a beautiful user interface. Now, how will you measure beauty? An easy to use user interface. How are you going to measure that? So think about your objectives, and you need to think about them a lot, because that will form the acceptance criteria. So some of the things that we do about objectives should be what are called SMART objectives. SMART, they should be specific. I've said one sentence. An objective addresses a particular thing. Like I've said, gather requirements, perform a systems analysis, design the system. Those are specific and do not qualify an objective. Once you say gather requirements, don't go and start saying by using questionnaires, interviews, blah, blah, blah. The moment you are looking at gather requirements, a person will only look at the requirements documents. Don't try explaining what you will use design the system. Don't start saying by using use cases, data flow diagrams, and no, just say design the system. Because somewhere in the documentation, you will have explained how you design the system. So measurable, acceptable, something that both of you agree, realistic, and then time-based. These three is like where I was saying, you in your mind, you are just thinking of delivering a product. In the customer's mind, he's thinking about other things. So you must agree and you must put boundaries. So that is clear objectives. We've talked about this. Then business need or opportunity, a concise statement of how the project's deliverables will contribute to the organizational objectives. Any organization has its objectives. Any organization has its strategic plan. So your project should be within the organization's strategic plan. I gave you an example on Tuesday where I was saying an organization, a country, an institution has a strategic plan. And usually strategic plan is limited to certain years. Like you heard about Kenya, 2030, we should have done these things. The university strategic plan usually comes in chunks of 5 years. So do not do a project because the strategic plan is saying that in 5 years, the university should have done this. And you are proposing a project to run for 10 years. Now, what happens after the 5 years? Supposing the management board is dissolved and another new management board appointed, what are you going to do? And this new management comes with different policies. And yet you have said your project is stretching over 10 years. And yet the institution's strategic plan is only for 5 years. And when they are doing their strategic plan, they are talking about how much money they will get or they will seek for and what they are going to do within this money. So you cannot plan beyond their strategic plan. This is what we mean to the organizational objectives. Scope, I said you clearly define what is in and what is out of the project. And I've given you an example. Maintenance is going to take 3 years. Your project is supposed to last six months. So what do you do? And you see, for you have planned for your 6 months. You've said, I'm dedicating my time to this client. But you need to make money for your organization to run. So other people are coming and making requests. You are committing to them. Then this person starts bogging you with maintenance issues. So what are you going to do? So you must clearly define the boundaries. Then the major milestones are identifiable points in time. I've talked about that. Target dates will be added later on. So at the point where you are writing the charter, you just identify the milestone. Now, later on, when we go into planning, you shall start putting there the dates. Then the major deliverables. I've said, once you have milestones, things you make assumptions about. These are things you think you say these things are not going to change. Because if you start asking your questions like, supposing the value of the shilling drops, then you will not start the project. So, and that's why you say things you are not certain of, but you can proceed if you behave as if they are true. Those are assumptions. Then it's good to list them explicitly. Let the stakeholder know that you are making those assumptions. So that if somebody falls sick for 2 weeks and he is a critical person, or is a person involved in the critical path, later on we shall be talking about the critical path. If you interfere with the critical path, you interfere with the project. So if that person falls sick, then the project will delay. So let the stakeholder know what your assumptions are. Then constraints. Constraint is anything that limits your ability to deliver satisfactorily. And to go along with constraints are the range of acceptable solutions. Your customer insists on open source. So you go to use my SQL. But you know, Oracle is a commercial product. Oracle costs money. Now, the people who developed Oracle went the extra length to include things which you may not find in my SQL. And he made Oracle because he wants to make money, so he's selling it. But the person who made MySQL are people who don't believe in buying software. And they could be experts, so MySQL is working. So you may find that your customer has gone somewhere and seen a product, but this product is running on an Oracle platform. So he wants the functionality of that product, but MySQL cannot give you that functionality. So what happens? You'll give them a product, but that product will not be as good as if it was implemented in MySQL. So that becomes a constraint. So look at cars. Somebody goes and buys a Mercedes, another one goes and buys a Toyota. The prices are obviously different. But when you buy a car, what is the most basic thing? You want to get from point A to point B. Cars were designed to make somebody move from one point to another without getting tired. Now, but what happens? Mercedes builds in comfort. Mercedes builds in durability. They build in safety and all those features. Toyota may have those features, but not to this level of quality of a Mercedes-Benz. But it doesn't matter. You get into a Mercedes, you'll get to Mombasa. You get into Toyota, you'll get to Mombasa. So constraints are things that do not necessarily stop the project, but are things which will make the project not hit certain targets, like the target for the budget, target for time, and so on. So preliminary cost estimates, how the costs will be defined and controlled. That's what we were doing on Tuesday. Risks, a high-level statement of risks identified so far, also includes the risk of not doing the project. It's possible that you may not do the project. That is also a risk. Then a stakeholder list, I think we looked at this, and then approval. People who are going to sign off that document. So in summary, project initiation is the first phase. The relationship of project to business objectives is key. Compare alternatives using the weighted matrix. Do a financial analysis, NPV, return on payback. We did that. Write the project charter, which we are now doing. So project charter is the primary output of the project initiation, and it should include the stakeholder list. Then completion of the project initiation is the signal that the project has approval to proceed to the project planning phase. Remember, the last thing is approval. So that is the project initiation phase. Now, I said at the end of every month, we should have an assignment. I mean, we'll have 2 assignments and then the exam. So the first assignment is based on what we have done and a bit of what we are going to do now. So I want you to put at the back of your mind that this is the assignment. I will write it formally, and I'll give the dates when I write it formally. So at this point, you should be thinking of us doing the first assignment. Sorry. Now, this first assignment, I mentioned a few minutes ago that you did your second year project, but in your second year project, you used ad hoc project management skills. But now we want you to start treating or doing projects in a formal way. So what I want you to do, I want you to go and look for your second year project proposal. Not the document. I want you to look at the proposal. Now I want you to work on that proposal based on this table. I will want you to rewrite that proposal based on this table. So that will be our first assignment. And like I said, I'm going to formally write it, and I'll show you what I'll be examining in that proposal. Okay, any question? Any question or any comment? Right, so I assume you are happy with that. We go to the next one. So next, we've said once the charter is signed, then it is agreed that this project is viable, so we can proceed. But you cannot proceed, you cannot embark on a project before planning for the project. So today we shall look at an overview of project planning. Then later on, we shall look at techniques that you use in planning. So at the end of this lecture, the learner should be able to describe activities in the project planning phase and then explain the project planning process. So project planning, just an introduction. Now, after the project charter is approved, the project initiation phase is complete and the project planning phase can proceed. When the project planning phase is complete, the project implementation can start. So far, you are just sitting down, you are in meetings and so on. The project has not yet started. Now, unfortunately, and I've seen this is people who do ICT projects are very notorious in doing this. You know, people are so eager to go in front of the computer and start coding. And So you ask them, so have you planned? I've seen situations where somebody comes with a product, then you ask him, so where are your design diagrams? And he looks a bit startled by that question. Now, think about it this way. Remember, I told you software projects are different from many other projects because software is intangible. It's very hard to see the product. So some people just go and start coding, writing code. But you must plan for that code. And designing is part of the thing. Now, let me put it in a way that you will probably relate to. Now, somebody wants a 3-bedroom house. Let's say it's a bungalow. Then a contractor comes to him and, oh, you want a 3-bedroom house? He says, yes. Then the contractor says, I've done these projects. Nitakujengea tu. So he builds a house. Now after he builds, once he starts laying the foundation, he calls you. Look at is this what you wanted? You say, no. These bedrooms are too small. I didn't want the kitchen here, and so on. But you've probably given him 500,000 to do that. Then he goes now and starts drawing a plan from what he has built, and then he shows you the plan, and then he starts telling you, okay, so what did you want? You tell him, move this kitchen from here to here, make this room much larger. So what are you going to do? Are you going to start, will you demolish the whole foundation and start afresh? Wouldn't it have been easier for him to give you architectural drawings, for you to work with the architectural drawings before he starts building? So in your 4th-year project, do not start before you design the system. It's just like what I'm explaining to you. Somebody builds a house, then he starts doing the plan from that house. It's going to be a big failure. But if the plan is there, the plan is just a piece of paper. Your design diagrams are on a piece of paper. You can change the designs. Your supervisor most likely doesn't know how to program in the programming language you are going to use. But your supervisor can talk with you about the plan, about the designs. Because from the designs, he'll ask you, so who are the users of your system? How will they interact with the system? What will the system be doing? You can discuss around that design. And that's why we plan before we do the project. So project planning is the second major project phase, and the second of the 5 process groups are identified in the project management body of knowledge. So what is the purpose? Why do we do planning? We do planning to establish business requirements. What do you want this project to do? What is the product? The product will ensure that I efficiently manage my stock. The product will ensure that I attract more customers and hence I get more money. The other one is establishing the cost, the schedule, the list of deliverables, and the delivery dates. So in the planning phase, you'll temporarily, because we've already started talking about the cost. Now, the next thing we shall talk about will be the schedule, the list of deliverables and the delivery dates, and the resource plan, where I will need so many people. these people will be involved in this phase. I will need this platform. I will need this computer. I will need this server. I will have to pay for these services and so on. And then the project planning phase is getting management approval and proceeding to the next phase. You will call a meeting with the managers, because at the end of the planning phase, you'll have a document and you can call a meeting to discuss that document. Now, that document has contents, so you will discuss the contents in that document. Now, once you have agreed, you sign off, and then you can start the project. So, what are the basic processes of project planning? You must plan for the scope, the boundaries. You must set the boundaries of your project. Boundaries in terms of money, boundaries in terms of time, and so on. Then secondly, you must prepare a work breakdown structure. At the topmost level, or at a very high level, you'll say stock management system. Now, what are you going to do to come up with a stock management system? One, you'll gather requirements. That is one work package. Two, you will design the system. That is another work package. Three, you will design the system, another work package. Test the system, another work package. Now, gathering requirements can also be broken into sub-packages. Gathering requirements, visiting the site, another one is a sub-package. Interviewing users, another one. Interviewing employees, another work package. So you are taking this product, breaking it into tasks that are involved into it. So we refer to those as work packages. Now, that is at a very high level. Then you shall do schedule development. You shall schedule what comes before the other one. Decide. This system analysis comes after gathering requirements. Designing comes after systems analysis. Then you'll have to see, are there any overlapping tasks? So once you have done that, for each task, you'll see what resources do I require? How many people do I require here? Do I require to buy anything? And so on. So you put resources. Now, once you've done resource planning, you budget. For each resource, there is a cost. So now you can see we've started from the work package. We have gone to the resources. Now we have put a monetary value to the resources. In the end, we shall know how much that project is going to cost. So you have done budget planning, then procurement planning. You've allocated different money. Now, this may involve some iterations, but you did budget planning. Now, budget planning, you are talking to the sponsor, and the sponsor is saying, this is the much I have. Now, procurement planning, anybody who is giving you a resource, he must tell you his price. You must negotiate. And that's why I said it's an iterative process. Then risk management planning. What are the risks? We've talked about risks. Quality planning. Remember, I told you that quality can never be a face in a project. Quality is built in the product. So you will have to see what quality features am I going to use in gathering requirements? What will ensure that I get quality requirements? When I am designing this system, how will I ensure that the designs meet the correct quality specifications? Then communication planning. Who am I going to talk to? How will I be talking to them? At what intervals will I be talking to them? Then stakeholder management planning. I already know the stakeholders. How will I manage them? When do I meet them? How do I communicate to them? And so on. So let me just pick this. Okay, that was important. So we move on. Okay, so we look at these things in detail. Scope planning. The process is scope, planning for scope. Or the phase is planning for scope. Now, what does it involve? It involves determining the scope is a key piece of being able to prepare a plan. Now, what is in the project? What is out of the project? Now, make it specific, make it measurable. I've already talked about that. The work breakdown structure lists a list of all the tasks and subtasks required to achieve the scope or produce deliverables. Like I've said, gathering requirements. We'll start with you visiting. That's a task. It will entail you talking to the people interviewing the ICT department. It's a task. It will involve you talking to the users, a task. It will involve you talking to management, a task, and so on. So we have a task that is called gathering requirements, but you break it into various subtasks. Now, this will help you in resource planning so that you know who is going to do what. Then, what are the relationships between the tasks? Are they independent? Independent means doing task one does not depend on task two having been done. So, in other words, you can do task one and task two in parallel. Do they have direct precedence? Does task two only start after task one has been done? Or more complex relationships? Tasks two can only start after task 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 are done. So this is the product schedule development. Then resource planning. What resources are required to carry out each task of the work breakdown structure? Who do you need? What type of people do you need? How many programmers do you need? Are these programmers the same people who are going to do the design? Budget. Do you have the necessary tools? Are you going to buy them? Do you need specialized equipment and so on? Budget planning. What is the required budget? When during the project will the amounts be needed? Is an external source of funding required? Then procurement planning. Will the equipment, supplies, software, etc. be purchased from another organization in order to carry out this product? Then risk management planning. What can you anticipate in the way of unknowns that might impact the project? Can you eliminate, reduce, mitigate the impacts of these risks? And how? Quality planning. What is the required planning? Required quality. How will it be measured? Now, quality has to go. You must have things which are measurable. Now, if you remember I talked about it where I was saying, and I think I was responding to a question somebody asked me, where I was saying, for software, measuring quality can be very difficult. But we have certain metrics that we use to measure quality. Then communication planning. What kind of communication will be required? Okay, under quality, we have something that is called quality function metrics. Probably you can explore that. It lists the things that we use to measure the quality of software. But like I've told you, it's a very difficult thing. It's a topic that is very difficult. And it depends on the programmer, it depends on the organization. Then communication planning. What kind of communication will be required throughout the project, with the team, with the sponsor, with other stakeholders? What forms of communication will you use? Are you going to use formal communication, informal, written, oral, and so on? What is the frequency of communication? And lastly, you must do stakeholder management planning. Now, remember earlier on, we talked about stakeholders. So the project initiation phase identifies the stakeholders. During the planning phase, additional stakeholders may be identified. Detailed plans are made about the format and the frequency of communication with each stakeholder. Tools are identified which can be used to track and control the relationships between the stakeholders and the project. So in summary, the project planning phase includes the scope planning, the work breakdown structure, the project schedule development, resource planning, budget planning, procurement planning, risk management planning, quality planning, communication planning, and stakeholder management planning. Now, with the plan approved by your sponsor, you are ready to proceed to the implementation phase. Now, that brings us to the end of that lecture. Yes, Wetungu.
Excuse me, sir. I have a few questions that
Yes.
I was requesting to post towards the end of the class.
Okay. Fine. So we go to the next one, lecture 7. Or lecture 8. No, it's not this one. So we look at scope planning. Now, let me just refer you back to this. Okay, so we are going to, we said project planning. So we are going to look at these two. Then later on we shall look at this. Now this, yeah. Okay, sorry, let me just leave it at that. So anyway, we have looked at a bit of this. So this we shall look at them. These two we shall look at together. We've looked at a bit of this. We shall then this we shall look at them separately. So today's lecture is covering scope planning and work breakdown structure. This is not what I want. Yeah, that's what I want. So we look at scope planning. Now, at the end of this lecture, the learner should be able to describe activities in the scope planning phase, explain the scope planning process, and explain the work breakdown structure. So scope planning involves defining the scope, looking at the project requirements, looking at the scope inputs, using what is called the requirements traceability matrix, then looking at the work breakdown structure, and looking at the scope statement. So project scope is one of the main activities in the project planning phase that determines and documents the project scope. So what is the project scope? The project scope is the definition of the work needed to successfully meet project objectives. The deliverables must be described in sufficiently low level of details. Now, why you have to do this is when you are dealing with a scope, you have to talk to your clients so that you are in agreement. And I'm referring back to what I said. If it's software, the longest phase of software is the maintenance phase. And you will be safer as an entrepreneur to have different contracts for the software delivery and for the maintenance. A lot of times when you mix them, you run into trouble. So you must put them in low levels of detail so that you can understand each other with the client. So for scope, you must be as specific as possible. Where possible, the scope statements should include how the results will be measured. Now, like I said, a phase, you can put a scope to a phase, like gathering requirements. You can put boundaries. You can say, it's going to take me 6 weeks. I am going to use 4 people. I'm going to need this amount of money. So you remember, you can see you are being specific. In terms of time, 6 weeks. In terms of resources, 4 people. In terms of the budget, 100,000. So that is being specific. Then 2, measured. How will you know that you've gathered requirements? You'll know that you have gathered requirements because you'll have a requirement specification document listing the requirements. So this aids you and the sponsor know with certainty whether that part of the scope has been achieved. So you have measured it and you have shown you have a product. Requirements should turn things to things like the organization strategic plan and business objectives. I talked about the strategic plan. Don't go beyond the strategic plan. Mention things that are not explicitly included in the project. Mention things is it limited to certain locations? If in an international context, is it in only one language? So there are certain things you need to mention. You will have a product and you develop your product in English. When you deliver it to the customer says, my people here are not literate in English. Could you have done it in Kiswahili? Or why didn't you do it in Kiswahili? So those are not explicit things, but you must mention them in the document. So scope, we've said here, they must be measured. Examples of measurable and non-measurable things. Like if you say a new system, a new registration system, that is not measurable. So what is this? Is it something that we are seeing on the screen or what? But if you say something like, with the new system, students will be able to register for classes using a browser or a smartphone. That is measurable because you can see students doing that. The system will be fast. What do you mean by fast? To a person who has had a few interactions with a computer, he won't know. Or he'll say, oh, this computer is very fast. But you take it to somebody who has been using computers over many years, he'll tell you, hey, excuse me, this is outdated. This computer is too slow. And so on. So you say, for it to be measurable, you say the response time will be under 1 second. Then somebody says the system should support the required volumes. What exactly does this mean? What do you mean by volume? But if you say 75 students must be able to add an average of 3 classes, each 15-minute period, measurable. Users will be happy. Users of the system will be happy. How do you measure their happiness? Is it by them laughing? Is it by them congratulating you? How do you measure that? User satisfaction will be measured by a standardized set of questions, which will measure on a point scale, like 5, where you say 0 is not satisfied, 5 is highly satisfied. 0 means not satisfied, 10 is highly satisfied. And then you put what is called a pass mark, where for 5 you say anything above 2.5 is acceptable. For 10 you'll say anything above 5 is acceptable. So going back here, we say where possible, scope statements should include how the results will be measured. Now, types of requirement, we talked about this last time. No, it wasn't this. I think this is a bit different. This is now talking about the system. So we have functional requirements, we have non-functional requirements. In other words, functional requirements is what the system is supposed to do. Non-functional could, for example, be things that the users will experience. For example, performance and then development. It could be technical requirements, could be business requirements, user requirements, regulatory requirements, and software. We need some software requirements, fundamentals. What are the unique challenges? And I keep saying this, software projects have their own unique features. So you need to list the unique challenges, and these requirements must be verifiable. So each requirement may require a different type of measure. You must have some metrics, like the size of the software, which could be in megabytes or gigabytes, the ease of use, user acceptance, where you are using a scale, satisfied, highly satisfied, and so on. Then help system, is it useful? Now again, software products are notorious. Most of them have help systems, but this help is written, most of the time the help is written in technical language, and people end up not finding it useful. Then reliability, rate of failure occurrence, how frequently does it fail? Once every hour, once every day, once in a week, and then what is acceptable? Availability, if it's the internet you are using, how available? Do you get to where you want to get anytime? Do you wait for specific times? Mean time to failure. What is the length of time? What length of time passes between failures? Then the number of occurrences. How many occur? How many occur in a week, in a day, and so on. Robustness. Time to restart after failure. Number of events that cause failure. Scalability. How many people can use this system? Supposing that number doubles, how does the system behave? So when you have requirements, you must have measures for those requirements. So for you to come up with scope, you must get inputs. For you to define the scope, you must get inputs from stakeholders. Now, how you gather inputs? Remember, it's not possible to meet all the stakeholders, like users of a system. People who are using the banking ATM machines. You're not going to get all those customers, but you will want to get a representative group, or you want to pick a small group which will represent all the customers. So there are various things, various ways we get scope inputs. We have what is called joint application development. Is a way of gathering inputs that will help you to define scope. Now, this is a methodology that involves the client or end user in the design and development of an application through a succession of collaborative workshops and JAD sections. Now, just like this statement, joint application development. You are developing an application, but that application is not for you, the developer. They are users. They are administrators. So we are calling it joint application development because you are getting input from all those people. and that input will define the scope of the application. Then we have quality function deployment, QFD, a structured approach to defining customer needs or requirements and translating them into specific plans to produce products to meet those needs. So again, it's meeting customers and talking to these customers about their requirements, and you put them in a structured way. You could conduct interviews to determine the scope. You could do what are called focus groups. Now, what are focus groups? But somebody wanted to. Focus groups refers to, when you deliver a product, different people have different views of this product. Now, going to the software product, we have the users. Then we have the administrators. Then we have the people who are going to maintain. All these people, their view to a system is different. So do not just take people and try to get information from them. Focus on their use of the system. So you will create one group which you are going to call customers. Go and ask these customers, what do you expect of your system? There are people who are administrators. What the customer does is not what the administrator does. Go and ask the administrators, what do you expect this system to do? There is management. What do you expect this system to do? So this is what we are calling focus groups. Interviews, of course, you know what it means, it's talking to people. Then focus groups. Then you need to have what are called group creativity techniques. Things like brainstorming, where you bring people together and you tell them this is the problem, so how do we approach it? People come with different views. Finally, you summarize and you agree on certain things. You have prototyping, develop a prototype or a simple version of the system, show people, let them respond to it. Based on their responses, change the requirements. Observation. Look at how people are working with the system in place. Because you are coming up with a new system or you're trying to improve that system, see them working and see if there's anything they are missing, and that is what you are going to include into your group. Then questionnaires and surveys. So these are all techniques that help you to gather information that will help you to define the scope of the system. So who are the sources? Because we are gathering information and these are techniques. Who are the sources? The sources include the project sponsor, management, the strategic plan, the users, the customers, the competitors, the suppliers, regulations, and many more. So again, we are not only limited to this. There could be other techniques that we could use to gather requirements. Like these days with AI, you notice that AI can gather information, and based on that information, it does some customizing without necessarily, and AI is just using quantified data. Now, it is also important to do what is called a requirement traceability matrix. Now, what is this requirement traceability matrix? Is tracing what caused this requirement to come up. like a requirement like an easy to use user interface. Somebody, you put there that requirement, an easy to use user interface. So you ask yourself, easy to who? Then the next thing you ask, who is the user of this system? So the user of this system is a child in kindergarten. The user of this system is the shopper of the supermarket. So why are we doing this? Is the way you design that user interface will be dependent on who is going to use the system. The way you design a user interface for a child is not the way you design a user interface for a person, a shopper in the supermarket, and is not the way you're going to design the user interface for an IT professional. So for each requirement, you trace the source of that requirement. So requirements traceability matrix traces them throughout the project process. It may link requirements to business needs, opportunities, goals, and objectives, project objectives, project scope, and work pattern structure deliverables, product design, product development, test strategy, and test scenarios. Or it may link high-level requirements to more detailed requirements. Now, what this simply means is that when you say an easy-to-use user interface and you talk to a child, you may have to define what easy to use is. So to a child, it must be very graphical. It must use bright colors. To a customer, you now start talking about the language that is used is easy. The colors shouldn't be so bright and things like that. So you can formalize the traceability matrix in this kind of table. Now, we are not limiting it to this. You are going to code your requirements. You are going to give them a number, because when you give them a number, when you are in a meeting, you shall say, excuse me, that is requirement number 5. That requirement number 5, don't you think we need to modify it so that it reads like this? So this is the code for the requirement. You say user interface must comply to the company standard. That is a requirement for that system. And that is requirement number 5. Now, who came up with this? Where was the source? What made us come up with this requirement? We came up with this requirement because this is an institution. Institution has its standards. So this requirement came from the Corporate IT Standards Manual. University of Nairobi has certain things that must apply to all the software that is supplied there. These things are in a manual. So if you are coming up with a new system, you must go through that manual. So this requirement came about from the Corporate IT Standards Manual. Give it priority number 1. It's in progress. Help tech uses corporate fonts. How did this requirement come? Okay, this is a requirement of the new system. So in the new system, don't just put there any fonts. We have many types of fonts. So don't just put there font because you fancy it as a programmer. That is what you like. You must use the font of the company. Now, what dictates that font. That font style is going to be found in the corporate style manual. This requirement is completed. Requirement number 86, include the users in the testing. Now that's the requirement that is in the requirements document. It's stating you must include users in the testing. Where are you? Who came up with this requirement? Is in the project charter item number 7, and the priority is 1. So this is what we refer to as the requirements traceability matrix. Now, the reason being is that when you hand over the system and somebody asks, excuse me, why do we have a yellow background and yet we know that the university colors are blue? Why is that background yellow? Yet the university standard color is blue. You see our buses are blue. You see most documents are blue. Why are you putting it? Why are you putting it yellow? Then you will answer. You see, in the last meeting, the management changes the policy. We are changing our colors. Now you notice, like, there's a time National Bank, their color was green. These days it's yellow and brown. It's being bought by another bank from Nigeria. You'll find that the colors change. So when you are designing something for an organization, do not just put there something. You must trace what is the root of this particular function. So requirements traceability matrix fields like this one has only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Should include, but not limited to, you must have a unique identifier, you must have a requirement statement, you must have a source, you must have a design specification reference, a test specification reference, test case numbers, remarks, and more depending on the particular situation. So this is just an example of a traceability matrix, but software, we have as many software as the number of users. So you'll find different users, different organizations have different fields in the requirements traceability. So the work, just a minute. Oh, I think I will stop there because I will stop there because Wetungu had a question or a comment, and because I have a meeting at 11. So next time we shall start by looking at this. So any questions? Okay, Wetungu, now you can go ahead. Wetungu, go ahead.
Good morning, sir, and good morning, everybody.
With?
Good morning, sir, and good morning, everybody.
Yes.
Based on what you have been teaching us today and recently, I had something that I thought I would also share with the class, because last year we did start a startup, which later became a company. And we did most of the things you have been teaching, but then we were still doing them, but not having learned the ICT project management unit. So we were doing some things and learning on the go. Some we were able to at least try and implement as required, but some we were not able. So I thought I would just share that with the class, then maybe you could critique.
Just give Wetungu, give me a minute. There's a plane that is passing. It's quite noisy. Yeah, there's a plane that is passing. Okay, go ahead.
So I just thought it would be okay to share with the class. Maybe then you can critique some of the things we did at least it will help others also to learn something small in about 3 minutes.
I still don't get you. Just repeat.
I'm saying last year we did start a startup, which later became a company, and
Yes.
we did most of the things which you have been teaching in class recently about
When you say we, who do you mean? You and?
uh, me as the director of the company and other directors who came in as investors.
Yes.
But most of it was just me running most of the technical. And I was just, let's say, like the engine, the brain of the company. The
Yes.
investors just came with funding.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I can share my screen for a minute.
Yes. Uh, okay. So I have to leave. So I need to stop presenting. Okay. So share it.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
So I'll start with the first one. Uh, so basically, at this point, we were just working as a startup for the company,
Mm-hmm.
and we would approach a client to give us a contract, and then after getting the contract, we would take it up now as a project, and at most of the time, we would take it up as a project that required the project management and everything that we are learning in class. So
Mm-hmm.
these are just a few documents that we were sharing with the clients. You can see here it is a statements of work. But
Mm-hmm.
let me just go to this. Like this one was
Oh, these are all different projects.
these are different projects.
Yes.
Uh, so let me. I'm looking for one that is okay. Let me just use this one. So for example, here we approached a client who had a residential hostel for students at Jomo Kenyatta University. So
Mm-hmm.
we told him that we would want to be internet service provider for his building, and the whole project involved installing infrastructure, putting up software to manage the network, and control the usage of the internet within the building. And
Mm-hmm.
also it involved coming up with a quote, a budget, a list of equipment that would be needed, and the installation, the design. So I'll just go through it very fast. So here you can see we were talking to the client, explaining the mission,
Mm-hmm.
who we are trying to talk to the client and explain to him who we were in the document
Mm-hmm.
now. So we gave him the mission, the vision of our company, who our company was.
Yes.
Uh, then there's the scope of work. We talked about the work that we were to perform, which let's say here, for example, it included the installation of a fully switched star network and also maybe CCTV. Then
Mm-hmm.
we went through uh, an executive summary with the company, the client,
Mm-hmm.
our approach to partner with the customer. Solution was to give a high performance service to the customer. Our value was real customer benefit. So these documents, when the client was going through it was just to convince the client that we had the, the, the the passion to do the job and the vision and the skills. So going just through the document, you can see we had objectives. So here the objectives were the network is to design was designed to achieve several project of the contract. It was talking about the bandwidth that will be giving a user, how many number of users the project would handle when it is now in use, the total capacity maybe that the client will be getting from the company now at the end of the project, and the cost.
Okay.
And here we're talking about how long the contract will go. Like this one is supposed to go up to this one was renewed, but it was ending last year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then the description of that of service now provide consultancy services. Uh, so here we are talking about now having implemented the project, and now the client is now using the product. This is now coming after now implementation of the project. So you are talking about how we will be uh, carrying on. This is now things we will be doing after implementing the project phase. So provide consultancy, develop dependable internet, furnish tenants with 24/7 maintenance. So so now this is just the aspect of the contract. So now I'll move now to another bigger project which now we did when we got investors now.
So,
So
So, what is your question now?
uh, my question was
Yes.
sometimes when implementing such a project,
Yes.
you you have like a document like this one now, which we shared with clients with a client, a director of another company.
Yes.
Then we discussed the entire project, what was the project budget, the project objective, stakeholders, key project staff responsibilities, milestones, project critical path elements. We were able to discuss all these things within the initiation phase of the project. We also
Yes.
talked about financial, business, legal, political, technology. We talked about what technology the project would encompass. Uh, we talked about customer expectation and customer support. So, uh,
So I'm
going through
asking
this
you're
document,
showing me this document to ask a
yes,
question.
it's part to ask a question, and it's also part to also share with the class so that at least
Ah,
my
okay,
fellow
okay,
classmates
okay.
understand that these things that we are talking about in class, we are not just talking about them at an academic point, just to read and do exams and pass. It's something that when we go out there in the field, these are things that we are actually implementing them and actually doing them. These are things that are doable within the ICT project phases outside in the market. It's not just academics. That is one other reason of sharing also with the class right now before I also ask the question.
Yes, thank you very much, Wetungu. That is very useful. Now, through the rest of you, you can see this is not academic. this is something that is going to happen when you go out. Wetungu is with you in class, but you see, he probably hadn't gone through project management course, but now he's going through the course, and what he's showing you is what happens in the field. That is what happens in the field. You end up with this kind of documents. So just put off your microphone a bit, Wetungu. Yeah, so right from the onset, I told you projects are very different. Requirements are very different, and so on. So the thing about Wetungu, your second document, leave alone the third one, your second document is perfect in the sense that you are now focusing on the product. You're talking about the product and so on. You are talking about the product. But the first document confused me a bit because it's mixing two things. Number one, I could see you telling the client about yourself. And then number two, you are talking about the client system. The second part, you are talking about the system. If it was me, probably that's how you do it. If I was the one, I would separate. Talking about myself, I'm trying to win a contract. I want to do something for somebody and they pay me. So that would be a document about myself. And that document I'll probably send to 10 other people. 10 other people. And it would be probably a generic document that I'll be sending out to people when I want to talk about myself. But the latter part of the project is now what I am talking, what I was referring to as it could either be requirements, or it could be scope, or it could be a mixture of requirements and scope. So in the first document, I think you should separate. Don't talk about yourself and include details about yourself in details about the project. I think they are separate things. But the second one was very specific. The second one is actually a statement of scope and a statement of requirements. That is all I can say. And thank you very much for sharing it so that these people can see that what we are doing here is what Wetungu and group do when they are out there. Is that okay, Wetungu?
Yeah, that is fine, sir. Then one last question.
Yes.
I discovered when doing such a document, like for example, this specific contract, we did this entire document, and we discussed everything, everything that entailed the project. We discussed even the technicalities, everything that, let's say, if the client decided to leave us and go and do this project with somebody else, like there was no way we could, like the client had everything he would need, that having given them the documents, there was no need for us to be even part of the project, because within the document we had discussed everything that the client needed to understand to do the project even on their own. So maybe in future
Wetungu,
documentation.
I don't know that you can hear me. I'm getting
Yes.
a message that I'm losing my connection. Can we pick this?
No, we are getting.
Let's pick this from next week.
Okay, sir.